The biggest mistake in Dynasty Fantasy Football is thinking you're a contender, but you're really a pretender. This is going to be one of my favorite videos that I ever put out on the channel, especially as we're approaching June, and a lot of people just got done with their rookie drafts, and their team is looking fire. They've been rebuilding. They just added a ton of young assets. Maybe you just made a wicked trade to go add a player to your team. I think the issue that I continue to have with people, not only in the community that we have here on YouTube, talking through Dynasty trades, talking through Dynasty trade scenarios, is the fact that a lot of you think that you are a better team than you actually are. And I'm not here to be downing on your team at all. I just want to talk a little bit about pushing the chips in, going from being a pretender to a contender, and when you know you should be doing that. Hit that like and subscribe button if you like Dynasty Fantasy Football content. Starting it off, I like to play my leagues with a window-based approach system. The first thing that we got to do is you got to know, what is the life of this team? How do we like to be competitive? So for me, I like to look at things on a 2-year basis. I used to look at things on a 3-year basis, and I think the more that I've gotten better at Dynasty and the more that I've played Dynasty, the more that I realize, hey, you can't be drafting Saquon Barkley and expecting to get 3 years levels of production. You can't be having a guy like CMC and expect that the next 3 years are going to be all good. But especially with assets that are maybe a little bit older, that are a little bit aging, 2-year window seems to be an appropriate level of time where you can get some solid production. So I just wanted to start that off with the window-based approach that I like to take as a 2-year approach. So I'm not typically trading rookie picks right now. I'm not trading my 2026 rookie picks because we're about to enter 2024. If I needed to trade some 2024 picks, if I need to trade some 2025 picks, I'm totally okay to do that if we are an actual contender. I also want to talk through the mistake of when you do think you are a contender, but you're actually a pretender. So the big thing that I think I also talk with a lot of people is like, hey, I'm just going to get into the playoffs and I'm going to make it work. Like in your redraft formats, I would agree with you. Making it into the playoffs and letting the chips fall where they may, like that is where you want to be. But in Dynasty, you either want to be first or you want to be last, because a lot of the leagues that you're playing in, if you're playing a lot of Dynasty leagues, it's either with your buddies for free or you have a high stakes, high amount of money leveraged in each league. So like for me, I typically play in $100 buy-in leagues. So when I'm looking at the overall optimization of my teams, I either want to be first or I want to be last, because I know that if I win the overall pot of money, that pays for future years. And if I don't win overall money, then I need to be building a team that can win the overall money a few times over. I think a lot of people like to think that, like I said, getting back to the playoff-based approach, they want to be able to just get into the playoffs and make some magic happen. So I actually pulled up this chart. It kind of took into equation of 912-team Superflex Dynasty leagues to talk through the seeding and the overall potential that you have of potentially making it to that overall first place finish. So if you're like the first seed, you have a 31% chance of getting that first place finish. If you're, first place, you get 24%, but of course you typically get that bye, so that's why the 5th and 6th are at 0 total percent. But let's say you barely get into the playoffs. Let's say you had a team that we said, was maybe in that pretender category that potentially gets in. For you to get the first place as a 6th seed, you have about a 7.89% chance. 7.89. That's not great. Like, that's not great at all. Would you take 7 shots out of 100 to win first place? I mean, some of you might. Some of you guys in the comments are definitely living on the edge. But for me, I'm not. And so for me, I want to really talk about, okay, so if I'm more of a pretender than contender, how can I get to the overall contention that I need to be getting to get into that higher probability of actually winning my leagues? Because at the end of the day, all you guys want to win your leagues. Like, that's why you're actually watching Dynasty Fantasy Football content in May, in early June, because you want to know how I'm going to win my league this year, how I'm going to win that pot of money, how am I going to get an advantage on my league mates. That's the only way that you're going to be able to do it. And so I want to kind of provide an example to you of a team that I took from rebuilder to contender and give you some of the moves over the last 4 years to turn this team into a super team. And I know this is maybe a braggadocious moment, but I think all you guys can do this in your own circumstances because it takes time, effort, and patience, and you just sending out a crap load of offers to get your team where it needs to be. So striking it all the way back to this 2021 startup draft, I know if some of you have just started playing Dynasty, you might not know the actual values on this, but it used to be a little bit more like in Superflex, as much as today you want the quarterbacks, wide receivers. Back in the day, you wanted the running backs and you wanted the quarterbacks. So in this draft, I started this draft off with Justin Herbert, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, Chris Godwin, Deshaun Watson, Brandon Ayuk. I traded my 7th round pick for a future 23 first, Cortland Sutton, Matt Ryan, Will Fuller, Jonnu Smith, Michael Carter. Now, if you look at that team, you're going to say, wow, like back in the day, Cam Akers at one, like when I drafted him, he was like the RB3 in fantasy football. And all of a sudden, Cam Akers tears that Achilles. Deshaun Watson is suspended. I'm looking at this team and I'm like, hey, I'm going to have to go into a full rebuild mode and get out. And so maybe you should take this time to say, okay, Caleb, I've rebuilt before. I've never been able to get it over the hump. So let's talk about some of the moves that proceeded to happen to build this team into the juggernaut that it's turned into today. So I'm not going to give you every move. We're not going to take you through the whole life of the team, but let me give you the high-end trades that happened. I traded Justin Herbert and the 109 in 2022 for Patrick Mahomes. At the time I get Patrick Mahomes, that turns into Justin Herbert and Chris Olave. So probably should have held on to that and kept Justin Herbert and Chris Olave, but I did get Patrick Mahomes. So at the time, Patrick Mahomes was the clear QB1 in Dynasty Fantasy Football. I mean, arguably he still is, but I like that trade because we were going absolutely young. So at the end of the 2022 season, my team was as follows. I had Patrick Mahomes, James Cook. I had traded Cam Akers out to get into Travis Etienne, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Evan Ingram, DK Metcalf, Deontay Foreman, and Deshaun Watson with a bevy of 2023 picks because we had absolutely gone in on that 2023 class. We had known how good the 2023 class was going to be overall and how it was going to be able to help jumpstart my team. I had the 101 in that class, fully expecting to take Bijan Robinson since I already had Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. So we take Bijan Robinson, we take JSN. We also proceed to get Zach Charbonnet in the second. But the big move that I made to go all in, because I already had Garrett Wilson, had a pretty good young core of nucleus when I was looking at Garrett Wilson and JSN. I just felt like I needed that stud wide receiver to kind of get me over the top, to really put me into contention. So I ended up trading for Jamar Chase. And ladies and gentlemen, I gave up way too much to go get some Jamar Chase, where I ended up trading Jordan Love, 324 first, a 2026 third, and a 2024 second, all to get Jamar Chase. Now, you might think that is crazy when you're playing with league mates, when you're playing in leagues where you got to play out outrageous numbers to get trades done. Sometimes that has to happen. And I had the absolute draft capital to be able to overtake and take that and deal with it. So, like I said, I add Jamar Chase to this team. So going into last season, it felt pretty good where I felt like I had a bevy of running backs, some decent wide receivers on top of Jamar Chase and Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, and I ended up trading 2 first-round picks to get Lamar Jackson. So Lamar Jackson was my QB2 on this team. Now, halfway through the season, Josh Allen gets thrown on the block. And everyone that knows, if you have the chance to get Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen in a Superflex league, that to me was, I had been rebuilding for years. I mean, I had started off that draft in 2021. We are now in 2023. So we've done this like 2-year rebuild where 2 really terrible years, and all of a sudden we're going for it a little bit in year 3. So I proceed to trade a monstrous deal where I get Josh Allen and George Kittle. I gave up, at the time, Desmond Ritter's throwing to Kyle Pitts. I gave up Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Lamar Jackson. Hear me out. That was a crap load to give up. I hear you that I probably lost that trade. So you can tell me that down below in the comments. For me, going all in, my team looked pretty good last year when we're looking at. We had Patrick Mahomes, Travis Etienne, Kenneth Walker, Garrett Wilson, Tyler Lockett, Jamar Chase, Travis Kelce, Jonathan Taylor, Bijan Robinson, and Josh Allen. And so you're looking at that team and you're like, hey, that has a ton of good potential. Sadly, I do not win the chip, and I'm the team that won it has gone back to back. So now we're looking at ourselves though, and I went all in. But the good news is I went in all in with assets that are going to help me extend the window. So like I said, I like to view things in a 2-year window. And really, when I was looking at this team, I was like, hey, I'm kind of in a 3-year window. So some moves were then made this offseason to continue to help that cause of going all in. I traded Jonathan Taylor, Zach Charbonnet to get me to a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs. Thought he was a little bit younger, liked the overall upside. If you tuned in any content, you know I love Jahmyr Gibbs. So I felt like I got the RB1 and RB2 in Dynasty. Still have Josh Allen, Garrett Wilson. I had the 102 in my rookie draft, so I was able to select Marvin Harrison Jr. We still have Travis Kelce. We ended up trading George Kittle in the deal that we got Josh Allen in a second to get Mark Andrews last year. I know we got injured, so that also hurt our kind of shot in the playoffs. But we still have Mark Andrews. We have Travis Etienne. We have Deshaun Watson as our QB3. And now we also have JSN and Jordan Addison because I ended up trading Kenneth Walker for Jordan Addison this offseason. So now if we're looking at our team, we're really saying, hey, really the only move that potentially could happen to really push the chips in more for this team is to trade a Jordan Addison and a JSN for someone like a Puka Nacua. So those are some ideas that I currently have for this team. But I think the most important thing is to know when to go all in, because a lot of times you take it from the ground up to rebuild. But I was at the point this last offseason when I looked at my team and I said, hey, I just need a wide receiver 1 and I'm ready to cook. And maybe I went a little all in too early. Like that's kind of what I'm learning. But by able to be adding a guy like Josh Allen also to the team midseason, like I felt like I was going absolutely all in. And now maybe you're saying you'd rather have Lamar Jackson, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London after that trade. I feel like my team's been loaded enough that I've been able to kind of withstand those deals, and especially for it being only a start 9 in a 12-man, it's a little bit more shallow, so you want the studs. But I think the most important thing that I want you to be taking away from this video is to really understand, is your team a pretender or is it a contender? Because if you can turn a pretender into a contender, then do it. But sometimes I feel like a lot of potentially people on the cusp think this one move that they're going to make is going to all of a sudden shoot them up the dynasty rankings, shoot them up their league standings, and it might not actually do it for them, and it might only actually get them in the playoffs. But getting in the playoffs and then getting beat, you'd almost rather have not made the playoffs, because you want to be able to go all the way and you want to be able to make and break those top level teams. So let me know what you think down below. Let me know, what is the biggest mistake you think pretenders trying to become contenders tend to make? Let me know if you found any value from this video. In my next video, we're going to be talking about when it's time to actually tear down, when it's not time to go all in for it, but when it's time to actually rebuild your team, reconstruct, deconstruct your team, and how that can look. I'll give you some real life examples of 2 current leagues that I have. Let me know if you like this style of video. I know it's a little bit different than my buy sells, or maybe my stash videos, or maybe just talking relatively around players. I just like talking a little bit about this dynasty strategy, because if you're not really thinking about it from a 4D chess point of view, sometimes you end up missing out later down the line. So let me know what you think of this video. Hit that like and subscribe button if you like Dynasty Fantasy Football content, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.